The Linguiverse Presence, the Shadow Spectrum episode 10 The Ghost, and the Soldier Disconnection and Duty, when avoidance becomes virtue. Welcome back to the Shadow Spectrum, where we trace the unconscious architectures of identity through the languages we live inside. Today we step quietly into the spaces between words, those pauses, absences, and silences where meaning hides when the nervous system cannot bear the heat of feeling. In the last episode, we examined the punisher and the victim, how righteousness and resentment dance together, each grasping for justice, each speaking in the dialect of hurt. Having journeyed through that moral theatre, we now arrive at a different stage altogether, one built not of noise, but of numbness, where stillness masquerades as strength and service conceals self-erasure. This chapter is titled The Ghost and the Soldier Disconnection and Duty, when avoidance becomes virtue. It is an inquiry into the grammar of disappearance, how some of us learn that safety lies in shrinking, or in serving, rather than in speaking. It asks a tender but necessary question. When does peace become withdrawal and purpose become punishment? The dialect of avoidance is rarely silent in intention, only in expression. Beneath every absent word pulses a vigilant intelligence, a body calculating risk, a psyche translating overwhelm into omission. The ghost and the soldier are two fluent speakers of this dialect. The ghost survives by dissolving, softening edges, dimming presence, fading from conflict to avoid engulfment. The soldier survives by enduring, sharpening focus, tightening posture, marching through emotion with disciplined denial. Both archetypes orbit the same gravitational field, fear of being felt. One flees the gaze, the other fixes it elsewhere on duty, doctrine, or demand. From a neurobiological view, these are the twin faces of defensive regulation. The ghost embodies the dorsal vagal response, a collapse into stillness. The soldier channels the sympathetic surge, action without effect. Between them lies the unclaimed ground of ventral presence, where safety and sensitivity coexist. From a linguistic lens, avoidance rewrites the script of the relationship. Sentences shorten, pronouns vanish, prosody flattens, what once was dialogue becomes data, brevity, logic, silence. The syntax of absence. From a philosophical angle, cultures often canonize these traits. The strong, silent type. The selfless servant, stoicism misread as sanctity. Yet every canon conceals a caveat. When we deify detachment, we demonize dependency, and the language of humanity loses its warmth. In nervous system language, NSL, terms, the ghost and soldier speak with restricted rhythm and compressed tone, signals of contraction, not clarity. The mirror linguistic hypothesis, MLH, suggests that such vocal attenuation mirrors internal fragmentation. The quieter the resonant, the further the self drifts from coherence. So in this episode, we will listen not only to what is said, but to what is withdrawn. We'll decode the semantics of stillness, distinguish peace from paralysis, and practice phrases that invite return. Reflection prompt. What truth hides in your detachment? Practice. Write the words you never say, one sentence that would bring you closer, not further. The anatomy of absence. When stillness hides suppression, to understand absence, we must first abandon the myth that silence is neutral. Silence, like speech, is semantic. It means it can soothe or sever, reveal reverence or radiate rejection. The task is not to break every silence, but to discern its origin. Is this quiet born of integration or inhibition? Does it contain emotion or conceal it? Presence versus withdrawal. Imagine two identical rooms, equally still. In the first, a monk breathes in rhythm with the world, presence distilled to simplicity. In the second, a child holds her breath under shouted words, terror dressed as composure. Both rooms are silent, only one is safe. Presence is interactive, the body remains responsive, micro-adjusting to relational cues. Withdrawal is inert, muscles freeze, gaze drops, the voice retreats behind the teeth. The difference is responsiveness, the subtle exchange of attention that marks aliveness. Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory, 2011, frames this distinction neurologically. Ventral vagal activation fosters engagement, the physiology of connection. Dorsal vagal shutdown induces collapse, the physiology of conservation. Thus, stillness can signify safety or shutdown. Context and contour reveal which. The neurobiology of numbness. When the threat exceeds capacity, the organism defaults to energy economy. Heart rate drops, vocal tone narrows, and digestion slows. The world muffles. This is hyperarousal, a trance of self-protection. Chronic exposure to unpredictable environments, volatile caregivers, chaotic institutions, and relational betrayal teaches the body that feeling is fatal. Over time, the nervous system prefers absence to overwhelm. Research by Schauer and Elbert, 2010, on dissociation describes this as a shutdown sequence, the final frontier of defense when neither fight nor flight is viable. Within this state, language itself constricts. Broca's area underactivates, yielding the hallmark of trauma speech. Hesitation, fragmentation, hush, linguistic markers of withdrawal. The withdrawn speaker often uses monosyllables, fine, yeah, whatever, substitutes logic for lexicon of feeling. It makes sense versus it hurts, prefers passive constructions. It was done versus I did, omits pronouns erasing agency, need to go vi need to go, delivers with flattened prosody, low volume and long pauses. Each feature reflects a microeconomy of energy, fewer words, fewer risks. In MLH framing, diminished resonance equals diminished relational bandwidth. Listeners subconsciously mirror this narrowing, leading to conversational extinction, two bodies orbiting, neither entering. The morality of distant societies steeped in productivity often valorize withdrawal. The Stoic executive, the ascetic monk, the tireless caregiver, all adorned with moral applause. Yet virtue, unexamined, becomes a veneer. Sociologist Arlie Hochschild, 1983, warned of emotional labor, the suppression required to maintain social order. But the soldier performs this suppression outwardly. The ghost internalizes it. Both become instruments of a cultural superego that equates composure with competence. Stillness versus suppression, somatic reading. Stillness can carry two very different meanings, depending on its nervous system origin. When stillness arises from integration, the body is calm yet alive, the breath moves low and fluid through the diaphragm, the muscles hold a soft, grounded tone, and the eyes remain engaged with gentle curiosity. The voice retains a warm cadence, paced with presence, able to respond rather than react. This kind of stillness is a steadying rhythm, not an absence of life. It signals that the system has found safety and is choosing simplicity. By contrast, the stillness of suppression is a kind of internal freeze. The breath becomes shallow and often held, the musculature either rigid with bracing or collapsed in fatigue. The eyes may lose their focus, appearing vacant or avoidant, while the voice grows monotone, delayed, or minimal, a flattening that reveals withdrawal rather than ease. This stillness is protective but costly. It severs resonance, creating the illusion of composure while muting aliveness. Learning to read these distinctions, in oneself and others, is essential to developing nervous system literacy. The question to ask is not, am I calm? But is my calm connected? Integration breathes, suppression holds its breath. The linguistics of logic avoidance states often privilege logos over pathos. Abstract nouns, concept, process, dynamic, replace visceral verbs, ache, reach, tremble. Philosopher Susan Sontag observed that to interpret is to impoverish, a warning that explanation can eclipse experience. The ghost interprets to disappear, the soldier strategizes to survive. Cultural codex of silence, from the samurai's saishin to the British stiff upper lip, many traditions script silence as nobility. Yet anthropologist Edward Hall, 1976, reminds us, silence too is communication. In high-context cultures, omission conveys deference. In trauma contexts, it conveys dread. The same sign, different syntax. MLH and NSL synthesis. According to MLH, every semantic act carries a resonant signature. When fear constricts breath, overtones vanish. Language loses harmonic richness, a spectral flattening measurable in acoustic analysis. See Pasansky et al. 2016 on emotional prosody. NSL translates this acoustics into effective meaning. Tight throat, thin tone leads to sympathetic bracing. Low volume, slow pace leads to dorsal retreat. Even tempo, melodic contour leads to ventral safety. Thus, reclaiming voice resonance is not performance but physiology, a return to communicative co-regulation. Philosophical excavation Heidegger wrote that language is the house of being. For the avoidant self, that house grows dark, shutters drawn, rooms unoccupied. Yet emptiness invites echo, even absence articulates longing. The challenge, then, is to re-inhabit articulation, to furnish silence with sincerity. True quietude is porous, not sealed. It listens even as it pauses. Practices of re-emergence 1. Name the now. Anchor attention with temporal language. Right now I notice. 2. Breath mapping. Trace inhales exhale length. Extend exhale to safety. 3. Prosodic play. Hum before speaking. Vibration awakens vagal tone. 4. Micro-disclosure. Offer one authentic sentence per interaction. Small utterances accumulate into presence. Syntax becomes sanctuary. In recognizing that stillness can be both salve and shroud, we reclaim choice. The goal is not to banish quiet, but to befriend it, to let silence serve meaning, not mask it. As we move forward, we'll meet the first of our two guardians of withdrawal. One drifts, one drills, both devoted to safety. Next, we turn toward the ghost, the archetype of gentle vanishing, the art of becoming air. There we'll trace how disappearance once defended dignity, and how voice, patiently refound, can become the bridge home. Reflection prompt. Where does your quiet end, in connection or in absence? Integration prompt. Before the next conversation, breathe once, feel your feet, and speak one word more than your fear permits. The ghost, disappearing to stay safe, withdrawal, witnessing, and the syntax of silence. There are many ways to vanish. Some people fade from rooms while sitting in them. Others leave whole relationships while their bodies remain in bed. Some disappear mid-conversation, their eyes turning glassy, their voice hollowing out like a cave, echoing back borrowed phrases. The ghost archetype is not the absence of self, it is the refusal of exposure. To ghost is to remain alive while invisible, to exist without demand. Beneath the surface, The nervous system is negotiating between the hunger for safety and the terror of scrutiny. Withdrawal, in this sense, is not laziness or apathy, but a linguistic retreat, the instinct to trade speech for survival. The ghost doesn't seek to dominate or deceive, only to endure unseen. Where the punisher controlled and the victim collapsed, the ghost dissolves. Dissolution becomes the strategy. And like all adaptive dialects, its syntax is precise. The semantics of absence, every silence carries a sentence. When words fall away, meaning doesn't. Silence has grammar, a choreography of pauses, half-breaths, deferred replies. Each omission reveals what the system cannot yet hold. In linguistic anthropology, silence is not the lack of language, but a mode of language. Duranty, 1997. It performs signaling hierarchy, dissent, intimacy, or withdrawal. The ghost's silence, however, is not performative. It is protective. In nervous system language, NSL, silence often mirrors dorsal vagal activation. Porges, 2011. The freeze response, an economy of energy, an exit from engagement. Words narrow into whispers or vanish entirely. Prosody flattens. Time slowed. The ghost speaks in brevity. Phrases stripped to bone. I'm fine. It's nothing. Don't worry. Each is a lexical invisibility cloak, a coded plea. Don't look closer. To the untrained ear, this may sound calm or composed. But MLH, mirror linguistic hypothesis, invites us to listen differently, beneath pitch and prosody, tone and timing, to discern disconnection, masked as discipline. The ghost's grammar is characterized by elliptical phrasing, sentences ending before completion. It's, I don't know, minimization, softening emotional valence, it's not a big deal. Temporal dislocation, avoidance of immediacy. Maybe later, we'll see. Self-erasure, removing the I from statements, should be done, needs to happen. Each linguistic feature mirrors a somatic exit strategy, a partial disembodiment from the emotional field. The ghost edits itself out of its own story. The ontology of withdrawal to withdraw is to choose distance over danger. From an evolutionary lens, this is adaptive energy conservation. When an approach or aggression both risk further threat, the body opts for disappearance. Psychologically, withdrawal serves as negative capability, the capacity to survive uncertainty by shrinking stimulus. But when chronic, this negation becomes identity. I am the one who leaves first. The ghost is not always physically gone. Often, they are hyper-present, sensing every shift, reading every tone, yet saying nothing. This hypervigilant invisibility is common in children of volatile or intrusive environments, where speaking invited punishment and silence became sanctuary. In adulthood, this can manifest as emotional numbing, the inability to feel safe while feeling deeply. Avoidant attachment equates intimacy with engulfment. Disembodied cognition, living in analysis rather than affect. Spiritual bypassing, interpreting dissociation as enlightenment. Philosophical framing, the virtue of vanishing. In many traditions, withdrawal is revered. The monk, the mystic, the ascetic, all step away from noise to find the sacred. Yet there is a crucial divide between retreat as reflection and retreat as refusal. The ghost often hides beneath holiness. They cite detachment as discipline, minimalism as meaning. But beneath the philosophy often hums fear's frequency. From a Buddhist perspective, non-attachment liberates. From a traumatized perspective, detachment defends. The language may sound similar, calm, abstract, and universal, but the intonation tells the truth. One vibrates with compassion, the other with caution. Philosopher Emmanuel Levinas, 1969, warned that transcendence without tenderness becomes tyranny. To rise above relation is not awakening but avoidance. Thus the ghost's path is not to abandon absence, but to infuse it with awareness, to remain quiet and connected, solitary and sentient. The mirror of relationship ghosts rarely exist alone. They haunt others' nervous systems, especially those of anxious or controlling partners. Withdrawal often provokes pursuit. Silence triggers speech. This is the anxious avoidant loop. One chases to feel safe, the other flees to feel free. In linguistic terms, this loop plays out as partner A, anxious, talk to me, tell me what's wrong. Partner B, avoidant, it's fine, nothing's wrong. Partner A, you're shutting me out. Partner B, you're overreacting. Each phrase encodes a plea misheard as pressure. The anxious uses language to reach. The avoidant uses language to retreat. Both seek safety, one in speech, one in silence. Breaking the loop requires metalinguistic awareness, the ability to hear not just what is said, but why. Through NSL, both partners can learn to translate each other's dialects. When you go quiet, I feel unsafe. When you need words, I feel overwhelmed. Such statements shift the syntax from accusation to awareness, replacing linguistic warfare with co-regulation. Healing axis, from disappearance to dialogue, the ghost's evolution is not toward noise, but nuance. Healing begins when silence becomes choice, not compulsion. 3 linguistic pivots guide this reclamation. 1. From minimization to naming, replacing it's fine with I feel uncertain. 2. From evasion to expression, shifting maybe later to I need time to process. 3. From abstraction to anchoring, trading, we'll see for, right now, I'm noticing distance. Each phrase reintroduces temporal and emotional markers, signaling re-entry into reality. In NSL, these utterances serve as regulation rituals, breath-led, body-backed speech acts that tether cognition to sensation. MLH complements this. When language realigns with lived experience, tone deepens, rhythm steadies, presence returns. Speech regains its shimmer, not performance, but participation. Integration practice. The reappearing act to reappear is not to return to old noise, but to resonate with new clarity. Integration invites the ghost to practice micro-visibility. Speak one sentence more than safety demands. Leave one pause unfilled. Let silence breathe instead of a break. Name one feeling aloud each morning. In relationships, offer context before exit. I'm feeling withdrawn. I need space to settle, not to disappear. This sentence alone can transform abandonment into understanding. Reappearance is gradual. The ghost need not shout, only shape the air again. Each word becomes a bridge back to belonging. Reflection prompt. What truth hides in your detachment? When you vanish, what story are you protecting? Is it the fear of being misunderstood, the memory of being mocked, or the exhaustion of explaining? Trace the logic of your silence. What does absence absolve you from? Write one sentence beginning, when I disappear, I'm trying to, and complete it without editing. Then read it aloud, slowly, softly, and listen for what breath reveals. Identification activity. Mapping your vanish point, observe the moment you leave, not physically, but linguistically. Was it when volume rose, when eyes fixed, when someone asked too much? Recall one recent conversation where you went quiet. Note the trigger phrase. What word, tone, or gesture signaled danger? Track your body. Did you breathe hold, vision narrow, thought scatter? Document this vanishing point, your unique linguistic threshold. Awareness precedes agency. Integration practice. Speak the unsung sentence each day. Voice one phrase you usually swallow. It might be, I don't know. I'm overwhelmed. I'd like to be alone, but still connected. Pair it with a breath. Inhale for inclusion. Exhale for expression. The goal is not eloquence, but emergence. Let language lead you home. The soldier, discipline as disguise, duty doing, and the denial of need. Where the ghost vanishes, the soldier remains, standing firm, silent, stoic, and unyielding. If the ghost's motto is, I am safe when unseen, the soldier's creed is, I am safe when useful. The soldier archetype lives within those who confuse discipline with dignity, endurance with enlightenment, and efficiency with worth. They are the ones who hold the world together while quietly falling apart. To the external eye, the soldier seems admirable, reliable, principled, and composed. But beneath the polish lies pressure, the chronic contraction of a psyche that equates control with care and labor with love. In this architecture, emotion is an enemy, rest is risk, and vulnerability is betrayal. The soldier's body is a fortress, their voice a command. Yet the more perfectly they march, the further they stray from their own heart. Anatomy of the soldier. When fight becomes faith, the soldier is forged, not born. Most emerge from environments of chaos or conditional love, homes where order meant safety, and safety meant survival. Where nurturing was inconsistent, the child learned to become their own regulator, their own rescuer. Each achievement became armor, each act of service a shield. Over time, the soldier internalized a central law. If I keep everything together, I cannot be abandoned. Neuroscientifically, this is sympathetic overdrive, the fight response refined into function. The soldier channels adrenaline into achievement, anxiety into action. They manage threats by managing everything. This state, though productive, is parasitic. It feeds on depletion. The nervous system never lands. Rest feels like ruin. In nervous system language, NSL, the soldier's dialect is tight, clipped, and declarative. Speech is sharp-edged, tempo brisk, tone unwavering. Each sentence is a salute. Linguistic markers include modal absolutes, must, should, have to, duty grammar, imperatives over interrogatives, do it, not can we, task focus, verbs of execution, fix, organize, complete, nominal detachment, replacing I feel with it is. The soldier speaks in commands because questioning once cost safety. Certainty became sanctuary, identity through service. I am what I do. I matter when I manage. I rest when it's done. These mantras form the soldier's metaphysics, a self assembled from service. The body becomes an instrument of order, the voice a tool of task. In childhood, love was transactional, earned through obedience or excellence. Thus, the soldier's worth calcified around utility. To pause is to risk invisibility. To fail is to face rejection. Philosopher Simone Weil, 1952, wrote, to be rooted is perhaps the most important and least recognized need of the human soul. The soldier's roots, however, grow into routines, fixed and functional, yet spiritually sterile. In the lexicon of trauma, this is fawn-fight fusion, a psyche that pleases through performance, pacifies through productivity. Their inner narrative sounds like, if I stop, it will all fall apart. If I need, I'll be a burden. If I ask, I'll be denied. So they never stop, never need, never ask. They live perpetually at attention, mistaking obedience for order and hypervigilance for virtue. Somatic markers, the armor of alignment, the soldier's posture tells their story. upright, chin. Task orientation, verbs dominate nouns and motion over meaning. Binary lexicon, right, wrong, success, failure, orders, chaos. Each utterance reinforces certainty, constraining ambiguity, the soldier's primary fear. In mirror linguistic hypothesis (MLH) terms, the soldier's tone mirrors their cognition, rigid, rhythmic, resonant, in a single frequency. Voice becomes a metronome, not melody, pacing over presence. To speak like a soldier is to trade resonance for rhythm, compassion for cadence. Philosophically, this reflects a Kantian ethic: duty over desire, will over want. Morality becomes machinery. Good is what is done, not what is felt. Yet the cost is connection. Where grammar governs, grace withers. Trauma origins. Love earned through labor. The soldier's origin story is not heroic, it's heartbreaking. Behind every perfect routine lies a frightened child who believed love must be deserved. In many families, responsibility is romanticized. The mature child, the helper, the reliable one. Praise cloaks pathology. The child learns to anticipate needs before they're named, to absorb stress before it's shared. This parentification, Jerkovic, 1997, installs a survival algorithm. If I fix them, they won't leave me. Thus, adulthood becomes an echo of obligation. The soldier doesn't just complete tasks, they complete people. But completion is a cage. Every success tightens the bars. Emotional needs are deferred indefinitely, replaced by checklists, duties, and doctrines. This moralization of fight mode transforms hyperarousal into honor. Anxiety becomes ambition, exhaustion, excellence. But beneath the medals of achievement lies a muted ache, the loneliness of a life performed, not lived. The virtue trap. When stoicism suffocates, modern culture venerates the soldier. Strong, grounded, unshakable. These are badges of honor, yet often they're symptoms of suppression. The soldier's serenity is steel-plated, not peace, but posture. They are fluent in restraint, illiterate in release. In workplaces they ascend, reliable, relentless, respected. In relationships they anchor, but rarely open. Affection feels foreign, emotion inefficient. Their mantra: others need me, I don't need. But duty without dialogue breeds desolation. When every action is an obligation, there's no room for offerings, no warmth, only worthiness. The soldier may meditate on detachment, mistake numbness for nirvana, and call control clarity. Yet their discipline is disguise, an identity armor-plated against intimacy. True discipline invites discernment. False discipline enforces denial. Mirror linguistic reflection. Resonance reduced to rhythm under MLH. Coherence is connection, tone matching truth. The soldier, however, compresses frequency. Voice steady but sterile, rhythm exact but empty. Their speech mirrors machinery, precise, predictable, emotionally anemic. This resonance reduction signifies a cognitive override, intellect suppressing instinct. Listeners sense the absence. Words land clean but cold, syntax, vacant soul. This is semantic suppression, meaning without music. The journey back begins not by breaking rhythm, but by reintroducing resonance. Let tone waver. Let phrasing soften. Let pauses breathe. When voice regains variance, the system rediscovers safety in spontaneity. Philosophical lens. Duty versus freedom. Immanuel Kant envisioned morality as duty-bound autonomy, freedom through obedience to reason. For the soldier, this becomes slavery to structure. In Existential Thought, Sartre, 1943, freedom is anguish, the weight of choice. The soldier avoids anguish through absolutism. Obey, don't decide. Thus, the moral compass calcifies. Ambiguity, the soil of growth, is paved with rules. To reclaim freedom, the soldier must exchange categorical imperatives for relational ethics, asking not what must I do, but what serves connection. This is the grammar of grace, verbs conjugated with compassion, not compulsion. Healing axis, from compliance to communion transformation, does not demand abdication of discipline, but integration of softness. The soldier must learn to stand with, not over, to act from, not against. This evolution unfolds through three pivots. 1. Both positions orbit a shared mythology, that chaos comes through emotion. The ghost concludes, if I do not feel, I will not fall. The soldier insists, if I stay firm, I will not fail. One evades sensation by dissolving, the other defends against it by directing. In relational life, these polarities often find each other. The soldier mistakes the ghost's quiet for respect. The ghost confuses the soldier's certainty for safety. Yet over time, absence feels like abandonment, and control feels like colonization. Each one longs for what the other suppresses, the ghost for groundedness, the soldier for gentleness. Their contrast is not opposition but oscillation, two poles of one nervous system pendulum. After periods of over-efforting, the psyche may swing into collapse, surrendering structure for stillness. After too long in fog, it rallies, reasserting form. Thus, many live a cyclical choreography: work until weary, withdraw until restless, return to work once more. The pattern feels principled, even pious, a pendulum of piety, where burnout is renamed balance and exhaustion mistaken for enlightenment. To break the cycle, one must see both ends as echoes of fear, not failings but familiar sanctuaries. The task is not to abolish ghost or soldier, but to invite them into dialogue. To teach stillness how to stay present, and strength how to stay porous. Shared root, fear of feeling, sanctified as moral strength emotion, once dangerous, is now deemed a distraction. In families or faiths where composure was canonized, tenderness translated to weakness. Children learned that tears tarnish trust, that uncertainty offends order. So they made a covenant, I will be good instead of whole. Psychology names this moral defense, when conscience becomes containment. Philosophy sees echoes of Stoicism misread, virtue shorn of vulnerability. Neuroscience calls it incomplete integration, affect held hostage by the cortex. Each language points to the same exile, the banishment of feeling from the temple of self. The illusion of virtue, when control or distance becomes identity. Observe contemporary applause. You're so calm. You never let things get to you. You're the strong one. Compliments crown coping. Yet constancy without cadence is flatline, not flow. The ghost receives praise for serenity, but serenity is the absence. The soldier receives praise for strength, but strength is a strain. Virtue, unexamined, becomes vice-wearing vestments. To the outside world, these individuals radiate reliability. To their inner world, they echo. Relationships become rehearsals, not revelations. Connection requires mutual modulation, two nervous systems negotiating safety. When one partner is frozen and the other forged, co-regulation collapses. Polyvagal integration. Weaving dorsal calm with sympathetic action healing demands hybridization. The stillness of dorsal with the mobility of sympathetic orchestrated by ventral presence. Step 1. Awareness. Name your state in real time. I'm retreating. I'm rallying. Step 2. Alternation. If frozen, introduce micro-movement. Stretch fingers, hum, orient eyes. If rigid, invite micro-rest. Exhale twice as long. Feel feet, soften gaze. Step 3. Weaving practice. Pause with pulse. Settle without sagging. Move without marching. Integration feels like stable sway, a tree, not a statue. Linguistic synthesis. Silence plus certainty equals Stoicism. Script language completes the loop. The ghost edits sentences into whispers. The soldier engraves them in stone. Together, they author a dialect of detached perfection, minimalist yet militant. Examples, it's fine. Compression, we must. Command, I don't need. Negation, let's stay objective. Avoidance disguised as analysis. This Stoic script values syntax over sense, grammar over grace. It communicates competence while concealing consciousness. Through the mirror linguistic hypothesis, such monotone phrasing mirrors a narrow emotional band. Resonance requires variance. Virtue speak flattens frequency. To reanimate tone, add qualifiers of context right now for me. 2. Use first-person feeling verbs. I feel, I notice. 3. Employ open interrogatives. What arises here? Each linguistic flourish reintroduces life into language. Philosophical bridge. Buddhist equanimity versus emotional repression. Eastern texts praise equanimity. Upekkha, steady awareness amidst flux. Western misreadings often mutate it into emotional muting. True equanimity coexists with compassion. Repression amputates it. The Buddha sat with suffering. He did not sterilize sensation. Similarly, Stoic apatheia meant freedom from passion's tyranny, not freedom from passion itself. Thus, spiritual maturity is measured not by monotone, but by measured melody, feeling felt, yet not flooded. Philosopher Martha Nussbaum, 2001, reframed emotions as evaluative judgments, signals of what we deem significant. To erase them is to erase meaning. Mirror linguistic hypothesis, resonance model, restoring tone through emotional honesty. According to MLH, every utterance carries a somatic signature, micro-vibrations that broadcast internal congruence. When honesty returns, harmonics expand. Exercises, resonance reading. Speak a simple truth aloud. I'm tired. Notice throat warmth, chest vibration. Dissonance detection. Utter a half-truth. I'm fine. And observe constriction. Retuning. Repeat the genuine phrase until the body softens. Honesty is acoustic. The body knows when words align. NSL application. Co-regulating through voice. Not vow safety isn't sworn. It's sounded. A gentle tone cues ventral vagal activation in listener and speaker alike. Practice voice as vagal anchor. Volume, moderate, tempo, unhurried. Timbre, warm mid-range. Pauses, porous, allowing reply. Rather than vow, I'll never hurt you. Sound safety, slow breath, steady gaze, melodic phrase. Regulation becomes relational music. Healing through embodied vulnerability reintegration asks for vulnerable virtue, strength with softness, silence that still speaks. Tone reanimation. Humming on exhale, singing imperfectly, or reading poetry aloud widens prosody. Breath reconnection. Inhale through the nose for 4 counts, exhale for 6. Whisper a feeling on the out-breath, sad, relieved, uncertain. Naming while releasing couples cognition and compassion. Somatic permission. Allow micro-tremors, tears, laughter, each a Thor in armor. Virtue need not vanish. It must feel. Morality with moisture, ethics that exhale. Integration arc from ideal to integrity 1. Recognize the idol. See how goodness guards grief. 2. Reclaim the need. Identify what virtue replaced. Safety, belonging, approval. 3. Relanguage the law shift. I mustn't feel to I'm safe to sense. 4. Rehearse resonance. Practice expressive micro-moments daily. Integrity from integrare means to make whole. Wholeness welcomes warmth. Reflection prompt. What does true peace sound like in your body? Is it silent or softly rhythmic? Does it breathe or brace? Record your natural exhale. Listen, does it sigh or stop? Let that answer be your teacher. Identification activity. Recall one moment you chose principle over presence, perhaps enforcing a rule, withholding emotion, or prioritizing perfection. Ask, what felt unsafe about softness? Journal the unseen fear beneath the virtue. Integration practice. Practice vulnerable virtue. Today, voice one genuine need without apology. I need rest. I need reassurance. I need to be held. Observe how tone, breath, and posture shift from command to communion. Each honest utterance re-educates the nervous system. Feeling is safe, softness is strength. The ghost and the soldier, once opposites, reveal themselves as siblings, children of the same creed. Safety before self. Their reunion births the integrated guardian, present yet peaceful, firm yet feeling. When calm is no longer camouflage and control no longer creed, virtue matures into value, a living ethic tuned to tenderness. The semantics of reconnection. Relanguaging safety. From silence to stillness, duty to devotion. There comes a point in every healing arc where withdrawal is no longer refuge, and discipline no longer dignity. The ghost, who found safety in absence, and the soldier, who secured worth through duty, now meet at a crossroads. Between them lies a quiet, unfamiliar space, not silence but stillness, not obligation but devotion. This is the terrain of reconnection, the semantic and somatic return to life. When the nervous system has spent years oscillating between detachment and duty, the first step toward reconnection is not a leap but a listening. The language of safety must be relanguaged, translated from the dialects of survival into the grammar of participation. In this stage, the task is not to speak more, but to speak truer. Stillness, unlike silence, is not an absence of sound, but an attunement to it. It is a posture of presence, not a pause of fear. And devotion, unlike duty, is not an adherence to rule, but an alignment with rhythm. Both require a body willing to stay, to inhabit the moment without negotiation or withdrawal. To reconnect is to risk resonance. After a lifetime of armoring through either retreat or rigidity, to re-enter a relationship with others, with the world, with oneself, is to allow sound back into the system. It is to recognize that what once felt perilous now might be possible, to be seen and safe, to feel and still function, to soften without shattering. Relanguaging safety. From silence to stillness, every trauma writes a dialect. For the ghost, the lexicon of protection is sparse, short phrases, ellipses, neutral tones that dissolve in the air. For the soldier, safety is scripted through command, clipped words, decisive pacing, and the grammar of duty. Yet beneath these polarities lies a shared motive, control of exposure. Both archetypes sought to contain chaos through language, one by withholding, the other by wielding. Reconnection begins by returning meaning to music, by reanimating the prosody lost in suppression and regulation. Linguists studying prosodic warmth. Cooper Coolan, 2004, show how melody communicates emotion more faithfully than word choice. It is not the statement but the sound that signals safety. In nervous system language, NSL, tone becomes a diagnostic tool. Does this utterance expand or constrict the breath, open or tighten the chest? A ventrally anchored voice undulates, modulates, breathes. It does not bark or vanish. Stillness, then, is the body's linguistic resting state, the midpoint between silence and speech, where the voice no longer flees nor fights. To dwell in stillness is to inhabit that middle register where resonance re-enters. It is the embodied I'm here beneath every utterance. So too must duty be relanguaged. The soldier's must becomes the devotee's may. The grammar of obligation transforms into the syntax of offering. Where once voice was harnessed to harness others, now it moves in service to sincerity, not to manage meaning, but to meet it. Voice reclamation, prosodic warmth and the return of I. The first word reclaimed in reconnection is often the most personal. I. Trauma erodes self-reference. The ghost deletes it. It doesn't matter. The soldier delays it. We need to. Both lose the pronoun that roots responsibility. But the reintroduction of I is more than grammatical. It is existential. To speak I is to step back into authorship. The mirror linguistic hypothesis, MLH, posits that language mirrors internal states, that semantic alignment creates somatic coherence. When I is reinstated authentically, the nervous system reorients. Ownership invites orientation. A speaker who claims selfhood in speech signals both presence and accountability. I need, I feel, I believe. These are not indulgences but coordinates of consciousness. Reclaiming I also restores curiosity. When one's safety is no longer contingent on correctness, questions become safe again. Open-ended phrasing. What do you think? How does this feel? Invites reciprocity rather than regulation. In NSL, these are ventral questions, invitations, not interrogations. Their tone arcs upward gently, signaling willingness to listen, not a demand to defend. As curiosity returns, warmth follows. Prosodic warmth is the sound of sincerity unstrained by strategy, a voice that bends with breath rather than breaking it. Studies in Effective Neuroscience, Porges 2011, Feldman Barrett 2017, affirm that vocal modulation communicates safety faster than logic. Thus, the act of speaking softly, slowly, with subtle variance is not performance. It is participation in safety's own language. To reclaim voice is not merely to project louder, but to allow resonance to inhabit honesty. The tone does not tremble under scrutiny, it trembles with sincerity. Emotional expression as participation in life. For the disconnected psyche, emotion often feels like an error, a breach in containment. The ghost equates feeling with failure. The soldier frames it as a distraction. But emotion is not an interruption of intelligence. It is intelligence expressed somatically. To express emotion is not to lose composure, but to expand communication bandwidth, to let life's signal move through. The philosopher Emmanuel Levinas, 1961, described ethics as an encounter, self-realized through the face of the other. In this view, emotion is participation. It is the language of relation, the vocabulary through which self meets other. Reconnection, then, is less a return to socialization than to ethical subjectivity, the kind of being that feels to know. Emotion reintegrated becomes information, not interference. Tears are punctuation marks of truth, tremors footnotes of feeling. When the voice quivers, it testifies, I am alive and I am here. In NSL, such expression signals ventral re-entry, the nervous system shifting from freeze or fight into flow. This does not mean perpetual softness, rather it means responsiveness. A ventrally anchored nervous system can cry and still communicate, can assert and still attune. This is the grammar of graceful participation, neither muting nor moralizing emotion, but translating it into tone. Emotional expression is not performance, it is presence in action. Each word spoken from awareness, not agenda, becomes an act of belonging. Philosophical insight, Levinas and the ethics of encounter reconnection, in philosophical terms, is a return to relation as revelation. Levinas saw the other not as a mirror or threat, but as a summons, the face that calls one out of solipsism into sincerity. To encounter the other is to be called into accountability. The self is not sovereign, but responsive. For the ghost and soldier alike, such responsiveness once felt perilous. To feel another's presence meant exposure. To answer another's need meant erasure. But when the nervous system stabilizes, responsibility no longer feels like danger. It feels like dialogue. Language becomes ethical architecture, each sentence a small covenant. I see you, and I remain. This is Levinasian linguistics, speech as stewardship, voice as vessel of responsibility. In this paradigm, the pronoun I no longer asserts superiority. It acknowledges duty. I will stay. I will hear. I will hold this gently. These are sacred semantics, acts of relational return. Such speech does not sacrifice autonomy. It enlarges it. For Levinas, freedom finds its highest form in service, not subjugation, in choosing to answer the other rather than annihilate them. This is devotion, not duty, an ethics tuned to empathy rather than enforcement, mirror linguistic hypothesis and nervous system language, resonance revival and ventral vocabulary. Under the mirror linguistic hypothesis, MLA reconnection is marked by resonance revival, the re-entry of rhythm, melody, and modulation into communication. Language ceases to be linear, it becomes lyrical, responsive to breath and meaning. In suppressed states, rhythm flattens, sentences shorten, stress patterns stiffen, and inflection narrows. This is not just aesthetic but neurophysiological. Under threat, the larynx constricts, prosody diminishes, and pitch stabilizes as precision rises. The result? Utterances that feel safe but sterile. In reconnected states, tone re-enters circulation. Pitch variation returns, pauses lengthen, words soften. The voice becomes a conduit of co-regulation, an externalized ventral vagal system, steadying both speaker and listener. NSL frames this as the cultivation of a ventral vocabulary, phrases whose syntax and pacing reflect safety's rhythm. These include relaxed declaratives, I'm here now, it's okay to pause. Open-ended questions, what would help right now? How does that feel to you? Affirmations of mutual presence, we can take our time, let's breathe together. Each utterance encodes both intention and invitation, a message that meaning can emerge slowly, without defense. Through repetition, such phrasing rewires the reflexes of reactivity. The nervous system learns that calm is not collapse, and connection is not captivity. The self no longer equates slowness with danger, nor softness with defeat. In MLH terms, resonance restored is recognition regained. When one's tone mirrors truth, speech becomes sanctuary. Integration axis, presence without peril, service without self-loss. Reconnection is not a singular state but a sustained practice of participation. It asks the psyche to inhabit paradox, to remain responsive without merging, and receptive without retreating. For the ghost, this means learning presence without peril, staying visible even when vulnerability hums beneath the skin. For the soldier, it means service without self-loss, offering structure without severing spontaneity. Integration lies in devotion, not duty, an orientation to meaning, not metrics. The reconnected being acts from affection, not avoidance. Work becomes worship when it honors wholeness. Speech becomes sacred when it mirrors sincerity. In practical NSL terms, this integration can be rehearsed through micro moments of return. A pause before answering, paired with breath. An I statement voiced without justification. A gaze held gently, not guarded. A word chosen for warmth, not winning. These are the rituals of reconnection, small repeatable acts that reassert one's belonging to life. Reflection. What word would bring you back? Consider the one word, phrase, or tone that feels like homecoming, a sound that bridges your inner distance. Is it here, still together? Speak it aloud. Feel how your body responds. Let that word become your anchor, your auditory reminder that return is possible. Identification activity. Record a short self-dialogue. One truth, one tenderness. Take a few minutes to voice 2 simple lines, one honest, one kind. Example, I'm tired. It's okay to rest. Listen back. Notice your tone. Does it comfort or command? Let the warmth in your own voice remind you of your capacity to self-soothe. Integration practice. Speak one new phrase of return daily each day. Offer yourself one sentence that symbolizes reconnection. I'm still here. I want to stay. I choose to listen. Repeat it when you feel yourself retreat. Over time, these micro-declarations rewrite safety's script, transforming withdrawal into welcome and duty into devotion. The polarity of protection, every language of defense, begins as a dialect of devotion, a way of saying, I want to live. The ghost and the soldier are not villains in this story, but verbs of survival, to vanish, to endure. One retreats into the sanctuary of silence. The other stands guard in the fortress of function. Both seek a safety that will not stay. In this light, detachment, yet beneath the Stoic syntax lies sacred intelligence. These are not errors of ego, but adaptations of essence, protective patterns formed when tenderness felt like trespass. Their language is honest in origin, even if distorted in delivery. To judge them is to miss their message. To listen is to learn what safety once required. When viewed through the lens of nervous system language, NSL, we see that detachment and duty are state-dependent vocabularies. The ghost speaks from dorsal stillness, conservation, withdrawal, a hum below hearing. The soldier speaks from sympathetic precision, regulation through control, order against chaos. Neither is inherently flawed. Both are incomplete without ventral integration, the voice of relational rhythm. The mirror linguistic hypothesis, MLH, teaches that coherence in voice reflects coherence in self. To hear monotone is to meet a mind managing overwhelm. To sense clipped phrasing is to feel a nervous system grasping for grip. Thus our task is not to fix these tones, but to translate them, from command to curiosity, from silence to stillness. Philosophically, the ghost and soldier embody 2 extremes of existential response. The ghost embodies Levinasian flight, the terror of encounter, a retreat from responsibility. The soldier enacts Kantian compulsion, morality as a mechanism, duty detached from desire. Between them lies a field of dialogical being, where ethics emerge not from avoidance or obligation, but from present the choice to meet the other without armament. Reconnection, then, is not simply behavioral, it is ontological. It requires a rerouting in the reality that to feel is not to fail. To stay is not to surrender. In this middle ground, stillness replaces silence, devotion replaces duty, and voice returns as vocation, the call to inhabit one's truth aloud. The paradox of virtue, both archetypes believe they are righteous. The ghost sanctifies withdrawal as wisdom, calling numbness neutrality. The soldier canonizes duty as devotion, calling rigidity resilience. But these are virtue traps, spiritual disguises for emotional fear. Avoidance becomes framed as equanimity, compulsion as character. To awaken is to reclaim discernment, to ask not only, is this right, but is this real? Does this composure come from clarity or collapse? Does this calm steady the soul or silence it? The psychology of virtue reveals that moralizing emotion often masks unprocessed pain. Perfectionism, piety, and precision can be linguistic proxies for safety, control coded as conscience. In this sense, the soldier's stoicism and the ghost's asceticism share a root system, a childhood equation between love and performance, safety and self-suppression. True virtue, what Aristotle called eudaimonia, the flourishing of the soul, cannot thrive in threat physiology. It requires ventral openness, the courage to feel complexity without fleeing or fixing it. Thus, to be good is not to be flawless, but to be fully felt, attuned, adaptive, alive. The reclamation of resonance, the healing of both archetypes, is not found in new beliefs but in new resonance. Voice becomes the vessel through which the nervous system relearns participation. To speak slowly, with rhythm and regard, is to remind the body it no longer needs to disappear or dominate. To invite another into that sound is to restore co-regulation, a duet replacing a monologue. As resonance returns, recognition follows. The self, once scattered across suppression, gathers in sound. Each tone becomes a tether, each breath an anchor. The world once muffled begins to echo back. You are here, you are heard, you are whole. Reconnection is not an event, it is a daily declaration. I am still here. I want to stay. I can feel and not fall apart. Through such simple phrases, the psyche reclaims what trauma took, linguistic life. Safety ceases to be a script. it becomes a song. The ethics of staying in the end. The ghost and soldier converge at a single question. What does it mean to stay? To stay is to risk being seen. To stay is to stand without armor. To stay is to accept that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of compassion. Levinas would say staying is the first act of ethics, the refusal to flee the face of the other. NSL would call it ventral anchoring, the physiological capacity to cohere amidst complexity. MLH would name it semantic sincerity, speech aligned with state, tone tuned to truth. To stay is to surrender the illusion of invulnerability and embrace the integrity of involvement. It is the ultimate linguistic act, a conversation between nervous systems, a communion of breath. And perhaps this is the final devotion, not to vanish or to vow, but to vibrate, to let life move through you, freely, faithfully, without fear, perfection, guilt and the search for clean power. As the dust settles from battle and the silence begins to hum with life again, another voice arises, quieter but no less commanding. It is the whisper of purity, the promise of peace through perfection. After the ghost's retreat and the soldier's discipline, the psyche may seek safety in spotlessness, a world scrubbed of shadow, a self untainted by contradiction. But this next illusion is gilded with good intentions. Perfection appears as purity, guilt as conscience, control as clarity. The anxious mind, weary of chaos, now chases moral cleanliness, an immaculate state where ambiguity is abolished and flaw becomes sin. In episode 11, Obsession and Purity, the Morality Trap, we step into this shimmering snare. We'll explore the Order Keeper's compulsions, where righteousness becomes ritual and control masquerades as care. We'll listen for the linguistics of purity, crisp diction, conditional phrasing, the careful choreography of a conscience on call, and we'll trace how absolutism, the refusal of grey, transforms anxiety into dogma. Through the lenses of cognitive rigidity, moral psychology, and spiritual bypassing, we'll ask, what are we really seeking when we seek to be spotless? What do we fear imperfection will reveal? Weakness, wickedness, or simply wounding? And perhaps most importantly, can power remain clean without becoming cold? Can we hold integrity without erasing intimacy? This will be a descent into the ethics of error, a conversation about compassion's grammar, where grace is the punctuation that keeps meaning human. Reflection prompt. What are you afraid imperfection will reveal? Practice. Speak one imperfect truth aloud, because every blemish tells a story, and every crack lets the resonance return. Personal reflection. There's a moment after years of striving where even goodness grows heavy, where doing the right thing feels more like defense than devotion. I've been there, measuring worth in correctness, mistaking care for control. I've cleaned until nothing could move. I've prayed until silence became static, and beneath it all, what I really wanted was not purity, but peace. If you recognize yourself in that precision, if you've ever sought safety in spotless sentences or flawless days, know this. You were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be present. Purity without compassion is another cage, and sometimes the holiest act is to let the dust settle and stay. There are many ways to leave a conversation, to drift in quiet, to march with certainty, or to pause in presence. Tonight, may you choose the latter. May your silence soften into stillness. May your structure surrender to song. And may your service become a sanctuary, not a sentence. You do not need to vanish to be valued. You do not need to prove that to belong. Your worth was never waiting at the end of endurance. It was here, in the breath between, where duty turns to devotion and voice returns to vow. Thanks for joining me today. Until our next reflection, speak with integrity, listen with presence, and live with alignment. You've been listening to the Linguiverse Presence, the Shadow Spectrum. I'm James Miller.